went to Niger with the intention of, doing a lot of interviews at the beginning and seeing how I could best help over the next 2.5 years, and ended up working a lot in nutrition in particular, and got really excited about moringa. Have any of you guys heard of moringa before? Some, maybe a few. So 5. Okay, 5 people. Cool. Sorry, it's a little loud here. So yeah, for those of you who haven't heard of it, moringa is a tree, grows all across Africa, India, Philippines, Haiti. It's a very quickly growing tree, and the leaves are incredibly nutritious, actually more nutritious than kale. So a lot of big NGOs like USAID, World Church Service, have really been encouraging more people to grow it and use it locally. I found in Niger it's often eaten with kuli, which is this peanut snack. It's like peanut resin, and then they add the moringa leaves with it, and it makes this really delicious snack. And it's sort of what I survived off of as a Peace Corps volunteer. It was great. But I found that often moringa wasn't being utilized to its full potential, that a lot of the women who I was working with didn't really see any incentive for them to grow it because it wasn't an income generating crop, wasn't really something that they could sell at the market. And so one of the things that they asked me was, how do we earn an income off of this? Like, how do we create a livelihood out of moringa? And so, long story short, my time as a Peace Corps volunteer got cut a little short due to a terrorist attack. So I ended up, everyone in Peace Corps Niger was evacuated. I had to return home early, but I kept thinking about moringa and about these women that I worked with, and wanted a way to continue to work with them. So started Kuli out of that desire. So we source from women's cooperatives. We actually work in northern Ghana and Tamale, and so we pay fair trade prices and work with a local nonprofit who helps to do a lot of nutritional education and really distribute moringa seeds, encourage people to grow it locally, and then sell some of it to us. And so we sell it in the form of nutritional bars, and then also a supplement powder that you can add to smoothies and shakes. And we're in a little over 100 stores across the West Coast. So we're still relatively small, but are growing pretty fast. We just launched in shelves in December of last year, so we're about 9 months old. So yeah, that's kind of the quick background on me. I'd love for this to be an interactive conversation and hear more about you guys. Your bios were very impressive, and just what you're interested in chatting about.
And as everyone gets their questions together, I was wondering if you can talk about the process of actually making that transition from an idea you were passionate about and making that into a business, and how you went about the early stages in terms of forming local partnerships and also forming international partnerships, and how you just made that transition into a business.
Yeah, it's a great question. So made it slowly, I would say. This was something that I started working on as a Peace Corps volunteer about 3.5 years ago now. And so I came back to the U.S. and wanted to find a way to do it, but kind of also knew that most people in the U.S. haven't heard of moringa, that it's something totally new here. And so before I went and made promises to all the women that I've worked with and said, yes, I'm going to buy all your moringa and it's going to be the next superfood in the U.S., I wanted to start really small and test out the idea and see if there was any viability behind it as a business opportunity. So the first thing I did was get go through the whole process to begin importing moringa to the U.S. just on a very small scale. I think, the first thing we did was import like 200 pounds of moringa, and then went to farmers markets where we created the first iteration of nutritional bars made with moringa and did testing in farmers markets. So what we were looking for was a way to gauge our conversion rate. So, my co-founder has worked in food products for quite a while, and she's found that if you get about 7% of the people who come and sample your product to actually purchase it, that's a pretty good conversion rate from sampling to sale. So in the farmers markets, everybody who came by, we did what's called a shotgun survey, where we took down basically their demographics. So marked very quickly, male, approximate age, what did they sample, did they like it, and then did they purchase it? And so from there we were able to get an idea of like, okay, how many people are actually buying this, like what is our conversion rate? And we also took down people's comments on, what did they like or what did they not like? And so we actually were getting a 16 to 20% conversion rate at the markets we went to. So it was double the goal that we set. And we were also selling out in most of the markets that a lot of people were eating them. They're really interested in it. And we found, as we tested out different recipes, that we couldn't add too much moringa. If we added too much, it was kind of grassy. I don't know how many of you have tried moringa before, but it's pretty potent stuff. So we scaled back the moringa amount a little bit, and then got to the point where we were selling out at every farmer's market we went to and getting a pretty good conversion rate. So that proved to us, like, okay, Americans are interested in this. We know we have a good first product, what they call, an MVP, minimum viable product. So now let's see if we can really launch this. And so, of course, the biggest challenge as a new business is raising capital. And so for us, we turned to crowdfunding. And we did this for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, it's a relatively easy way to raise capital. And then also because we thought it would be a good way to publicly launch our company and really get people excited about it. So in June of last year, we did a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo. We planned it out months in advance. We were really deliberate on how we set everything up. And we raised $53,000. And so that enabled us to do our first major manufacturing run and launch in Whole Foods in Northern California. And so we've just been kind of picking up steam from there. Any other questions?
Okay. So I'll relay the question. So the question was, because I'm closer to the microphone, the question was, on crowdfunding on Indiegogo, was it donation? Was it equity based? Was it just mere donation? And what's the combination? Was it structured in a way?
So for our first capital, was it equity based or donation based?
Yes.
The question? Yeah. So the first Indiegogo campaign we did was all rewards-based crowdfunding. So basically, people were donating money in exchange for some reward. So mostly it was, moringa bars, or we also had seeds and T-shirts and other stuff that they could get. But it was all non-dilutive, so not equity and not debt. It was technically a donation, although they did get some product. So it was actually a great way to get a bunch of first customers. We got, 8,000 first customers 800 first customers. We shipped about 8,000 bars out, all from our first manufacturing run. From there, we actually went on and got a small loan from Kiva, just a $5,000 loan to kind of hold us over. And then we did an equity-based crowdfunding campaign. So we raised $350,000 from about 20 people, all accredited investors. And that really helped us scale up our company and and continue to grow.
Did you hear the question? Want me to relate?
No, I can't hear. Yeah.
The question was, so is Kulikuli incorporated solely in the US, or is it partly incorporated overseas, or exclusively incorporated overseas? And talk about the legal structure and corporation for the company.
That's a great question. So when we were originally setting it up, we were thinking of setting up both something in West Africa, like a separate LLC, and just pretty quickly realized that you can you can only really do one thing well. And the one area that have a lot more expertise is in bringing food products to the U.S. market. So we talked to a bunch of different people and managed to find a nonprofit that had an LLC that was already exporting moringa to the U.S. and they were incorporated in Ghana. And so we work really closely with them. We are the biggest purchaser of moringa from them and have developed a very strong working relationship. So we don't own the cooperative. The cooperative is self-governed, and then the nonprofit kind of helps oversee that and sells to us. But it's been great for us because I'm not an expert in working in rural Ghana. I worked in rural Niger for a little while, and I kind of understand a few things, but I think it's always better to work with local people who really know what they're doing and then play to both of your strengths. So I think my strengths as an American is that I have a pretty good understanding of the U.S. market, and I've done a good amount of marketing and PR stuff here before.
Hi, this is Emma. I'm not sure if you can hear me now. Is
Yeah.
it clear? So what is your supply chain right now? Are you only interested in Ghana, or are you also looking at other West African countries that are possibly doing moringa? I'm asking the question because I've actually discovered a small entrepreneur that actually does moringa and actually does it in a nice packaging quality. Very surprised that I saw this in Africa, and they sell in teas, and it's the currently shelf in these markets, like the supermarkets. We currently have shelf space there, and I'm trying to see if I can get international support. I'm not sure if they're going international yet, but we're trying to develop a relationship. One of the initiatives I'm trying to do when I get there is to introduce their products to the international market, is because I know the value of that plant. I'm not sure if that's something your company will be interested in at this point or later.
It's a little hard to hear you. I caught the first part of your question about our supply chain, but I wasn't able to hear the
closer. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So I was saying that I came across the entrepreneur that actually won a business competition doing moringa tea, and the packaging is excellent. They actually have product placements in the Lebanese stores in Sierra Leone and everything. And I'm thinking, wow, this can actually be exported in like America and so forth. So one of the strategies that a friend of mine were talking about is to export it. I was supposed to export some this time, but timing didn't work out. But when I return, that's going to be something we're looking to after this whole Ebola crisis has resolved itself in maybe 6 months or so. But I was asking, your supply chain, is it only in Ghana, or are you also interested in other countries that are growing moringa? And I know there's other agricultural company that I came across during my work in the agriculture sector that are actually planting many, but they're UK based, but they operate in Sierra Leone, that are planting a lot of moringa trees that are looking to export the plant, overseas. So I'm not, so if you do want to expand your supply chain, let me know. I'm still.
So we are. We're developing out our supply chain in Ghana, but are certainly, we're growing pretty quickly and are interested in other suppliers, particularly in West Africa in the same region. the big things for us is we need to have, there needs to be enough of a supply that it makes sense to start sourcing. So we're looking for about 1,000 pounds a month to start, and then
Thousand.
eventually 1,000 pounds.
That's like
Like dried moringa,
right. Okay.
dried and powdered generally. And then also the sort of, we look at it from an ethical standpoint, like what are the farmers being paid for this? Is it smallholder farmers, or is it like a big kind of monoculture? We tend to prefer smallholder farmers that are, being paid at fair trade prices. Is it organic? And then lastly, does it meet all of the U.S. quality standards? So generally, after we answer those first questions, then we get a sample of the moringa and test it at our lab and figure out, okay, is this high quality moringa? Can we sell this in the U.S.? So yeah, I'd be happy to chat after this or via email and kind of send you what we look for.
Yeah. I was wondering if you had any questions about growing plants.
Oh wait, it's a little hard to hear the question.
Well, this is kind of yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Um, yeah, you can maybe elaborate on how you went about research started. Um,
So the conversation going on here is with a fellow that will be going to West Africa, actually 3 countries. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
And part of the strategy or expectation from the fellowship is that that would also be a market research for potentially expansion of a real estate business into the region. So she wanted to know that as an American going to a new environment for the first time that she is, that what advice would you have for her in terms of while doing the fellowship, also being strategic to using that in forming partnerships, and how you're able to succeed with that to the point that you now have strategic partners that continue to supply your organization even after your service.
Yeah. I mean, I think making sure that, when you're over there, that you really figure out like who are the key influencers in the community, who's really making decisions and forming relationships with them, and then using that to help kind of leverage when your fellowship's over if you want to find some way of continuing it. I found that business is all about relationships, and it's all about who you know and who you've developed a relationship with and can then continue that relationship after your service ends. Does that answer it at all?
I would say so.
And of what value was your Peace Corps service to Quickly right now? Maybe in terms of your early investors, or as you go into U.S. stores, forming partnerships, you know, does that bring any advantage in moving forward? Does that
Yeah, I think Peace Corps is really valuable in a number of different ways. I mean, you know, first of all, it just lends some credibility to the idea that I've, been on the ground, have actually worked in, rural West Africa and have some understanding of what the culture is like, and what some of the challenges are in working in the developing world. Um, and so I think that's kind of a bonus. Also from a kind of a marketing and branding standpoint, the Peace Corps has a pretty good name in the U.S. People tend to regard the Peace Corps pretty well as being, if you're devoting 2.5 years of your life to living in a rural village, generally you're not going to be a horrible person. So we use the Peace Corps brand quite a bit. Of started by a former Peace Corps volunteer. just in helping to show some of the social proof that like we're doing this for the right reasons, that we're not trying to exploit the people that we're working with. Um, and then I think the last thing is the network has been really useful. That one of our first investors, actually two of our first investors, are former Peace Corps volunteers.
To piggyback off that question, uh, what were some of your initial challenges? You mentioned some of the challenges working in the capacity as a Peace Corps member in a developing um, in a rural space. I would like you to talk more about in your business in the business context. What were some of the initial challenges that you encountered and how you were able to deal with that?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the first challenges we had was just in figuring out how to get the moringa over here. So initially we were trying to work in Niger, which is where I had done the Peace Corps. But as you know, Niger is a landlocked desert with very little infrastructure, and so getting the moringa out of Niger proved to be really, really challenging. So then we actually found a partner in Nigeria, and we're sourcing from there for a little while, but found that the moringa wasn't meeting our quality standards. That there was actually traces of E. coli, so we tested everything right away and ended up having to return that moringa and not use it at all. Um, and then finally finding our current partner in Ghana. I think that the biggest challenge there has just been that things move a lot slower in Tamale than they do in the U.S. And so, you know, for us, there's still a challenge in making sure that we can get the moringa we need on the schedule we need it and be able to fulfill all of our orders on time. And it's difficult to predict. Like, we had this kind of amazing TV appearance where I was actually on MSNBC Morning Joe. It's a pretty widely watched news show, and that was awesome. So we got $30,000 worth of sales in a day. Had just people, so many hits on our website. But we had just released a new product. It's this moringa powder product. We'd been testing it out on our website, and so we had like 50 of these powders in stock, and then all of a sudden we had 2,000 of them ordered. And so there were just like all sorts of delays in getting the product, getting the powder from Ghana to here to our customers. It ended up taking us over a month to deliver on all of those orders, which is really tough because we had a lot of angry customers. So I think managing growth is really challenging when you're trying to work in a context that's farther away, and also just like working in rural areas, making sure that you have enough product on hand to fulfill orders in the event of something like that. So going forward, we've tried to get a lot more moringa just in the U.S. kind of stockpiled, so that if anything like that happens again, we'll be able to fulfill it right away.
We can take one more question if anybody has any question. So, Lisa, I was hoping you can just drop some wisdom on us on as the fellows make that transition and leap of faith for their service. Piggyback your own experience, like how was your adaptation process like, and how did you overcome culture shock, and how did you eventually embrace the new environment and make the most of it? And if you can just frame that in an advice or wisdom for the fellows as they plan to depart in the coming days.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I think you have to go into it with an open mind and understand that, your normal isn't other people's normal, and kind of have a sense of adventure and seeing that, okay, well, I signed up to do something totally new and be challenged, and it's interesting I think, one of the challenging things for me is that I found that there was virtually no privacy in my village in Niger. Like, kids were always walking into my house, people were always knocking on my door. And as an American, you kind of grow up with like these boundaries and these borders, and then all of a sudden you're in this rural village where everybody just talks to everybody all the time, and there isn't really this idea of privacy or needing alone time. And so that was something that I had to realize, like, oh, that's a part of my culture that isn't really necessarily a part of other people's cultures, and I had to find a way to kind of express my need for some alone time to the people I was living with and to my friends, and just having to say, like, look, I, I'm sorry, but this is something that I need to be happy. So, yeah, understanding what your needs are, and then understanding that not everybody is going to instantly recognize those needs.
Oh, great. So, Lisa, we appreciate your coming to talk to us and sharing your experience in Niger, in West Africa, and the important work you're doing at Kuli Kuli. We thank you for your participation in this session, and we look forward to forming partnership and collaboration moving forward.
Yeah, I'd love to keep in touch. And my email is just lisa@kulikulifoods.com. So lisa@kulifoods.com. And I'm so impressed just reading through your bios. You all clearly have done amazing things, and I'm sure we'll be doing even more amazing things soon. So good luck.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm going to end the broadcast.